But thank you for doing this, by the way. So awesome. How are you? Everything okay over there?
Today I'm tired. I
Mm,
think, occasionally we go through weeks, and I think these days especially we're like just hits us sometimes like a wall of like the craziness going on. But no, I'm doing okay. My kids are good. I had a really nice weekend with them. We didn't
mhm.
spend it, screaming at each other the whole time. So it was a plus.
It's a lot busier, not doing anything or going anywhere than one would think. I think that's what we've all learned this
It's
year.
amazing how, and it seems to be that like whenever I'm planning something, everything tries to happen on the same day in like the same 2 to 3 hour period. Like nobody wants to do anything except for like Mondays from 1 to 4. Like everything happens. So yeah.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
And you're
And
like,
then
how am I
like,
not going anywhere? And I'm still like, I'm so busy.
I
Today was
know, I
not
know.
busy for me. I was fine. I was lazy today, but
Good, good.
you know me.
So sorry, I
That's okay.
my schedule got all screwed up, so I'm actually in my car right now.
Oh
So
no,
don't mind the awesome background. But
we're all doing this how we can. I would be lying if I said I haven't done a Zoom call in the car just so I could find someplace quiet.
gotcha. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You are all zooming everywhere, doing
Yes.
everything with Zoom.
Right. And the best is
So
when everyone in the house has to be on their own Zoom with shitty internet, and so everyone's like nobody's Zoom is good because everyone has to be on at the same time.
exactly. I'll tell you what. I've got a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old, and they are
Oh,
so amazing at just mastering all this stuff like within weeks
right.
because they have to do it for school. It's like we have a fully functional office in my home right now because everybody is capable of like linking
Right.
up and streaming themselves
It's
anywhere.
Yeah, I know. The kids, at least they can figure some stuff out. Like it took me forever to figure out how to hook my iPods up to my computer. That took me a while.
Yeah,
Today.
iPod.
That
Yeah,
took me a while
kids.
today. So yeah. My kids be like, "Oh my god, mom, it's so easy." I'm like, "Well, hold on. There's a button," and I realize I'm becoming my mother.
My kids would just be like, "What's an iPod? Like, why don't you just use your phone?" Like,
Right.
it's embarrassing. I can't talk to them
Yeah.
at
Oh
all
yeah.
about it. So, and again, thank you for doing this. This is really cool because we're talking like, well, we're talking about the craziness of the world this year, and so time kind of escapes me. But I know that Fuller House rolled out its last season last couple months or so. This happened, right?
We December 3rd was when the last 9 episodes of Fuller House came out.
December 3rd? Oh my
Yeah,
God!
I
I thought
know,
it was
right?
like a month.
It,
Wow.
it,
Okay.
it, it was a month or two ago, and it was also December 3rd. Both of those things feel equally true.
Mhm. Absolutely. Well, we're still all kind of living in it, and that really brings up the first question I wanted to ask you because I was thinking about the fact that you've done this twice now in a way, and like you had a long
Yes.
stint as a kid and then kind of had to say goodbye to a family and a job and a role in life that you had known for a long time, and then you did it all over again, but now it's kind of a different story, not only because obviously you're in a different place in life, but because TV shows don't just go away the same way they did before. I mean, this is still on Netflix and will continue to
Right.
have a following and be watched and be talked about on social media. There's probably not a day in your life that will go by where you couldn't just immerse yourself into conversation about Fuller House just by logging onto social media. Is
Oh,
that
I'm sure. Exactly.
does that make it feel different, like as opposed to being sort of that true goodbye and moving on to maybe a different chapter of your professional
Um,
life?
yes and no. I think for me, like the biggest difference in saying goodbye sort of the second time around was that, the first time when I really looked back at it, I realized that, from the age of 5 to 13, this was what I did. So I didn't really have much of a memory of my life without it.
Hmm.
And so when it ended, I think as a kid, it was a lot more jarring because that was literally all I could remember my life being was maybe a couple little brief memories here and there before I was, 4.5, 5 years old before I was doing the show. But all of my school experience from, my first time going to school through middle school, through 8th grade, I was doing sort of this weird hybrid of going to regular school and doing school on set. It was all I knew. So saying goodbye at 13 was much different than saying goodbye at 38 this time, just because, the first time it was like, am I going to see these people again? Am I going to stay connected to this family? Or is this goodbye? Is this it? Am I losing them? And this time around, it felt very different because that was completely eliminated. That fear of losing those people was eliminated because, one, I'm an adult, so I have, just much more contact with not only the cast, but also the crew. But also I know these people now for, 34 years. They've been in my life forever. I am secure that they're not going anywhere and that they'll be there forever. And being an adult and sort of jumping into the next thing is very different than being a kid. There's a lot more opportunities. You get to create a lot more opportunities as an adult than you really do as a kid. When you're a kid coming off a TV show, it's like, oh, the kid from that show.
Yeah.
As an adult, it's a little bit different, and you can kind of broaden your horizons as far as what you're looking to do with work and all of that. And, this season I got to direct the third to the last episode of the show, which was the Nearly Wed Game. So once I got to direct too, I feel like I really opened a lot more doors of things that I want to do and that I continue to want to do after the show ended.
Awesome. And we're going to talk about the Nearly Wed Game. This is the episode that you chose for us to kind of dive into a little bit. And I'm glad you did, because it's a great one and really cool that you were in the director's chair. I want to ask you, and it's really cool that you're here, by the way, for another reason, because a while back we had somebody, I think Andrea Barber on the show.
Oh yeah, I love Andrea.
And
Maybe.
that was, and it was great because we got to kind of focus a little bit more on Full House. We talked about Full and Fuller House,
right.
But we talked a lot about sort of the beginnings and, what it was like working with babies and animals and all
oh my gosh,
the
right.
circus.
The two things that they tell you to never do.
Yeah.
Work with animals or kids.
All you need now is a political show, and then you'll just all the things that you never delve into.
Right.
But it's
yes,
cool.
Exactly.
I like the idea of also talking a little bit more about Fuller House, especially for you, because, as you said, you were so young, younger than Andrea, younger than almost anybody else on the show, and now the idea of coming back. What was that process like for you? Like from the very beginning, when did you first hear rumblings or were told that there is a chance that this thing might happen, that you have an opportunity to decide to step back into?
Well, we were actually, Candace and Andrea and I were really involved in pitching the show to all the networks too. It was me, Candace and Andrea, along with Jeff Franklin, the show's creator, and Bob Boyette, who is the executive producer on, both Full and Fuller House, and John Stamos. And we all went into, every pitch meeting and were trying to sell the show. And we went a lot of places. And we knew that there was an audience for it. We knew the audience of Full House would love to see where these characters had wound up, that it would, and it was interesting because at the time there weren't any reboot shows. That hadn't been like a big thing that everyone was doing. And so I think people were kind of like, well, we don't want to do the same old show. And it's like, no, it's a different show. It's new, it's the same characters, but, in today's world and all this kind of stuff. And a lot of networks turned it down, ABC Family, ABC, CBS, we had gone and pitched a lot of places, went to Nickelodeon, and it just so happens that Brian Wright, who wound up leaving Nickelodeon a couple months after our pitch and went to Netflix, he really loved the idea and believed in it and thought that it could be something great. So when he went over to Netflix, he was like, you guys are out pitching this show, and I think we should bring them in. And so actually that was how we wound up at Netflix, was, from doing a pitch to another network that it just went so terribly. I believe it was one that I couldn't make it to because I was working. like a normal job. I was working, and John, I think, was out of town. Candace and Andrea, I think, perhaps went to the wrong address for Nickelodeon. Like, it was just a whole thing. And so we went, and this, you know, this happened at Nickelodeon, and we were like, well, that was terrible. And eventually it wound up, you know, we were in front of the right person. It just wasn't the right network at the time. So, you know, I love when things like that happen and sort of unfold, you know, serendipitously along the way. But we were very involved from the beginning. So we knew, you know, several years ahead of time, like 2 years ahead of time, that this was going to be happening.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that. Now, the show, I felt, was phenomenal. And, you know, especially when you look at it. No, well, I mean, to be honest, I'm a little bit aged out from the original Full House. So I watched a lot of it, but I was a little old for it. But to kind of go back and revisit it, and like, I'm a big 90s guy personally, so I love all of the idea of all the shows coming back over the last 5 years. Full House, like you said, one of the first, but there's been a bunch of them, obviously, from the Connors to Girl Meets World to, and everyone kind of treats the idea of doing this a little bit differently. But I love the idea that you guys essentially were able to, I mean, I look at it like the perfect melding of two shows in one. Like, there's one show that's sort of an updated version of what Full House was for the same young age group. And then there's a whole other show going on at the same time that's kind of a tongue-in-cheek, sort of a wink and a nod to the older fans who watched the old one. And now we can all kind of laugh at ourselves just a little bit about it at the same time.
Of course. And that was something that I loved that we did as a show. I mean, you know, we would always joke, we're like, look, this is not, you know, we're not doing, you know, earth-shattering, revolutionary television topics. We're having fun, and we're doing something that is, you know, very four-quadrant, that all, you know, age ranges and families can watch, and they can watch it together. And it's something that you can watch having never seen any of the original Full House. And you might not get some of the little Easter eggs that we did, but you could watch the show as a standalone and be fine. Or you could know the entire series of Full House and then love how Fuller House really connects with that and uses a lot of fun guest stars and storylines and repetition and things like that. So we really tried to do that to make it so that, you know, it wasn't only people that grew up watching the show or that only watched it, you know, in reruns, or only little kids. We wanted it to have a pretty wide ranging, you know, audience. And at the end of the day, we were a fun family show. We had fun. We didn't take ourselves too seriously. We knew what we were, and we made fun of ourselves at times, and we laughed about it because, you know, I think people used to always trash Full House, and now, you know, Fuller House, like, oh, it's stupid and it's lame jokes and isn't that, like, we know we're doing broad family comedy. Trust me, we're dressed in fairy godmother costumes, you know, playing guitar. Like, I am very aware of what this looks like. And I'm also very aware that there's a huge audience of people that love watching that kind of stuff and are along with us for the silly ride. And I love that, you know.
Absolutely.
It's not every project that you want to work on as an actor to be completely silly, but, you know, at the end of the day, doing all that kind of stuff. I mean, when else am I going to do a show with a Velcro wall stunt? Probably never. You know what I mean? So I kind of look at it as like, it was pretty fun. It was pretty fun. We did some things that I will never do probably on another job in my life.
I would think not. I would think not.
Lots of dance numbers. Constant dance numbers. Yeah.
More than one could ever have predicted or imagined. You guys went
more than we certainly ever did on Full House. I mean, that was the thing, is this, you know, Fuller House, we really kind of ramped up some of the fun, silly, over the top stuff, and we had a good time doing it. You know, we committed ourselves.
Yeah, you know, the cool thing about the show also is that, as you talk about, you know, Jeff Franklin and, you know, so many of the original people in front of and behind the cameras involved, so many Easter eggs, so many references back to the old show, so many tributes. Was that something where the ideas kind of kind of flew from everywhere, or were there people that were part of the writing staff that were specifically like the very deep diving trivia
There
experts
were
who?
there were both. We had it, it was interesting in our writers room, and every season the writers room changes. But originally Jeff was in charge of the writers room for the first couple of seasons, and for the first 3 seasons. And so, he had very clear ideas of stuff that he wanted to do. But then we also had a lot of wonderful writers in there who, some of them had actually grown up with the show. And so they were like huge trivia, Full House trivia. They knew all kinds of stuff. And then, there were some writers that just came up with completely new storylines and new characters and all of that. So there was a great mix of people in the room who really honored the tradition of what Full House was and knew the type of show that we were doing. And then there were also people that pushed us a little bit and wrote storylines, like about Stephanie not being able to have kids and things like that were a little more grounded and real and worthy of discussing on the show.
Were you guys all happy with where the characters ended up, like from initially when Fuller House first started, and then sort of their journeys, I guess, through the few seasons of Fuller House as adults? Was everyone kind of jazzed about like, oh, cool, like this is what I'm doing now these years later? Like, was there a lot of positivity about it?
There was a lot of positivity about it because we had a lot of input. Jeff was really wonderful when he started creating Fuller House. He listened to our input and listened to where we thought Stephanie and DJ and Kimmy would be in some of these characters. So we did have an input, and it's rare as an actor to get to play sort of this bookended life. You hardly ever see that anymore. Wow. And so, it was really fun to get to fill in the middle for Stephanie and like know kind of where she wound up and what she was like as a kid. And then like, okay, what are the things that Stephanie's been doing, and imagine to myself. And, but we had a lot of input in it. So it was wonderful to go on these rides as these characters because, we knew that they were becoming the people that we hoped for them to be.
Nice. Now, we want to talk about the episode, of course. You mentioned it before. This is season 5, the last season of Fuller House, episode 16. So it's there's 2 more after this. There's one more episode and then the finale. So it's definitely crunch time. What was the process like for you to get the opportunity to direct this episode? Was this something you were interested in for a long time?
Yeah, I had wanted to do this definitely for a long time. And, the season before, Candace had gotten an opportunity to direct. And that was, they had, at first they weren't sure if they were going to give us all that opportunity, if we were going to get to direct or whatever. And then that last season, Andrea Barber got to write an episode. I got to direct, and Candace got to direct as well. And, it was something that I'd always wanted to do. But man, directing the third from the last episode, with almost everyone in every scene, it was fun. But it was a big undertaking for sure. And also knowing that you're sort of wrapping things up before like the last 2 big episodes. I wanted it to be really funny and really well done because I knew that the next 2 were going to be a little more emotional. And so I really wanted some of that great, Fuller House, silly, fun Tanner family, Tanner, Gibbler, Katsopoulos, whatever, all of our, I wanted that fun to be in there because I knew the next couple episodes were going to be, a little more touching and people were winding down with the series. So, but we had a lot of fun with the Nearly Wed Game.
And it was mission accomplished as far as fun. This is one of those classic. It's a classic idea of having this sort of game show that pits the main characters against one another, and it's a classic because you guys did it in Full House, which is of course very much referenced in this show. It also brings to mind, for those who are just sitcom fans in general, I always think back to to Friends. When they have that sort of makeshift game show where they compete for the apartments. Classic funny stuff, because not only is it fun to watch your favorites just kind of go at each other,
Of course.
but it's also another form of deep dive into a little bit of trivia, because it's it's
Of
sort of
course.
testing the knowledge of these characters about each other and testing the fans' knowledge. It's like they could play along at home like they do for Wheel of Fortune. So
Totally. They
um,
totally could. And we had fun, creating the answers and doing all that for the game.
oh, so did you guys have a big hand in that, as far as
No, I mean, they knew what the questions and all of that were going to be, but there were some things I think that they were like, okay, what was, just to get background information, the writers were like, okay, what about this? Was this what happened? Or, and we were always doing that with the writers, where they would put something in, and, if we saw something that we were like, well, that's actually not true. This is actually how it happened. Like, we knew, and they were like, oh, of course, like you guys would know. So
yeah, exactly. There's not going to be any debating that. It's like, yep.
Right.
Red-handed. I mean, let's just kind of go through the episode here, because it's fun from start to finish. So, what we're referencing here is an episode from 1993, the original Perfect Couple episode, which is basically not only a similar setup, but a very similar set physically. The living room just set up to be this makeshift game show situation. And so now we're bringing it back in 2020. And again, season 5, episode 16, we're talking about the Nearly Wed Game. And this is kind of running up to this triple wedding that we're planning. Everything is leading to the series finale here, where yourself and DJ and Kimmy, everyone's getting married all at the same time, all in the same place, which, spoiler alert, not going to be the place originally planned, but you are all getting married together, which is all that matters. And you guys get these secret, mysterious invitations. They turn out to be from Jackson, Max, and Ramona, the kids, the younger set of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an invitation for this game show that not only are they bringing this idea back to you guys as sort of a shower. Kind of
yes,
situation.
it's our wedding shower, I believe, with everybody. Sort of a fun
Yes. But they've also decided they're going to live stream it, because anyone under the age of 20, I believe was the quote, just live streams basically everything.
If you don't live stream it, what's the point? Right,
exactly. So it's kind of beefed up with live streaming and sponsorships, and they've really got a good, organized, professional thing going on. Everyone's excited because DJ, of course, ultra competitive all her life.
Right.
And she's on a mission now for her and Steve to win this thing again, or to win this thing for the first time, I should say, and prove that they are now a very solid couple that knows each other very well, which was not the case back in 1993.
Right.
And now, meanwhile, you, Stephanie, you and Jimmy, of course, also getting married, and you are on a mission just fueled by sibling rivalry at its finest.
Absolutely. She always wins, and I am determined. I'm like, this time Stephanie is taking it, and that was, it was so fun to play that sort of dynamic, between Candace and I, because we do have a sisterly relationship sometimes like that, where we're like, oh, well, I can do it too. We just, that's how we kind of are. I love her to death, and we, have those moments. So it's funny when they write that into the script, the super competitive, all of that kind of stuff, because she absolutely is, and so am I. So we were like, okay, we got this.
And then, of course, you've got Kimmy, you've got Fernando. They too want to win this thing, basically because they realize that they are the underdogs, the dark horse. They never win anything.
Right.
And Kimmy, in particular, wants to, for once, be a couple that is respected, I guess, in the world of couples.
Yes,
especially
exactly.
compared to you guys. So everyone heads into this thing with a lot of motivation, at least on, I think universally more on the female side. of each couple as far
Right.
as
It's definitely between the three ladies. Like the three ladies are taking this very seriously, and they're
right.
dragging their unwitting fiancés into this competition.
They're along for the ride. So
Yes.
this thing's divided into rounds. We get a round one. DJ and Steve just crush it. They just destroy you guys. And we get some fun callbacks as far as the questions and the answers. Again, these are things that if you're fans of Full House long term, or maybe even Fuller House long
In
term,
Fuller House.
you would know some of this stuff.
Yeah.
So, obviously we find out, or we are reminded again, that everyone's favorite celebrity crush on this show now and forever is Joey McIntyre, which is a great way to set up what is yet to come in the series finale.
Right.
And so then we have kind of a pause here where we have to kind of reset, and everyone has to figure out, how are we going to deal with this now? DJ and Steve are killing it. They're killing us. What are we going to do here? And this is where the guys start to get pulled into things, maybe a little bit more so emotionally than they planned for.
Right.
And this,
Yes.
so what is it like as a director for you now? You talked about kind of how the ladies are driving the train in this scenario and their
Right.
motivations.
Mm-hmm.
Now you've got to play with all the individual personalities of the guys, and how are they going to react to the pressure being put on them by their female counterparts?
Right.
Was it fun for you to kind of give life to those dynamics at this stage of the game?
We had so much fun with this episode. It was one of the episodes that, as actors, we all were like, oh man, sometimes you just get a groove, like you get a week that everyone's just pinging off of each other. And it was great. That was that week. It was so much fun to get to bring out the competitiveness and you get to see the real relationships of the couple through this game, of how they get along and kind of, what they're willing to do for each other, which was fun because you don't always see the kind of the behind the scenes workings of the couples on the show. And so, seeing each little conversation between each couple, you're like, oh, okay, I get them a little bit more. And I had so much fun playing with it as a director and as an actor. I mean, it was a great episode to be able to be in charge of, because everyone just gave me 110%.
Is it more stressful on the acting side of things, knowing that you're not able to necessarily fully focus on that for your day because you're kind of bouncing back and forth now, but you still have to be in front of the camera and give that great performance?
Yeah. It was a lot of switching hats. It was a lot of, and it was an episode that I was in a lot. So, as a director, I've got to watch it several times through from one side. And then as an actor, I've got to do it a couple times just so I know what the hell I'm doing on that side of the camera. So it was a lot of like, okay, now my actor hat's on. And, I would trust my associate director, Sam Ornder, who was with me that week. And, he would be taking a look at stuff. But I mean, I went in super prepared in my directing. I went in the weekend before, I blocked everything out. I knew what I wanted to see in my head. I knew what it was. Luckily, I know that set like the back of my hand, like my own house. So I could picture where I wanted people, entering, exiting, how I wanted them seated, all of that kind of stuff. And in that regard, it definitely made it a little bit easier to prep. But it was a week I had to be on my game in every sense of the word. And, show night, running back and forth, shooting, acting, it was a lot, but it was fun. I like that kind of chaos and pressure, so it was fun to get to push myself in that regard and really have to be on top of it, and do two jobs at once.
Yeah. Well, speaking of doing two jobs at once, everyone's kind of multitasking here because they are trying to figure out how to placate their significant others while at the same time trying to focus on the game and trying to just get through this thing. And we get kind of a bro moment between Fernando and Steve. Fernando basically puts it all on the line and begs Steve to throw the game, just out of pure mercy, just out of the idea of like, because he felt that Kimmy needed it. She needed it more. She wanted it more.
Needed a win.
Yeah, so he wanted to be able to provide that for her, which is, of course.
Right. And I love that we got to see that moment, because so often Fernando was sort of, he is obviously in love with Kimmy, but sort of silly and self-obsessed and whatever. But there was this real moment where he was like, I'll do anything for her. I just want her to be happy. And it was such a sweet moment, and you see Steve, like, just the kind of person that he is, that he really genuinely wants, them to win because he feels bad for them. But at the same time, he's like, but I'm terrified of CJ. But it was cute because you never really got to see sort of how they feel about and regard their relationship, and it was, it was cute because neither one of them, all three of the guys, they were just, they talk about so much, so they don't want to disappoint their fiancés. And it was, I thought it was a very sweet window into their relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a great episode in showing that, these are all couples that have different dynamics, which means that sometimes they're going to disagree or sometimes they're not going to be on the same page. But it also displayed just how good all those relationships truly were and how strong they were in their own ways. So that was kind of cool. And also, I feel like it was a fun opportunity to see the guys interact in ways that maybe in the background we don't see that much. Like, they're all a big family at this point. So, that relationship, that dynamic between a Fernando and a Steve is just as important as, some of the more prominent ones that we've seen over the season.
Exactly. So. And we didn't get, like we said, we didn't get to see those very often. So it was nice to see kind of how the guys, work together.
Yeah. And then, in the background, of course, you are trying to simultaneously calm Jimmy down and at the same time maybe try to toughen him up a little bit, slap a little sense into him subliminally, just try to get him in the right frame of mind to calm down. And, it seems like the idea is that Stephanie is kind of dropping the intensity here, but we see in a little bit that doesn't quite necessarily pan out that way as we return to round 2. And things are definitely different now because Steve is throwing all of his questions. He's intentionally screwing everything up. DJ is not happy. It's got to be fun to direct her, or for her to play less than nice at times, because so much of this series, she's so good and so like the moral compass.
It was great to get to bring that side of her out and to be like, no, you just really, like, you're pissed, like, and I like when we, like you said, when we see that in DJ, because she is so typically nice and always makes the right decision, and all, to see her be like, I don't care, I just want to win. Like, there's something fun about seeing the character's flaws and faults a little bit, so.
And it's a great time to do it because, again, we're almost near the end of this thing. So it's really a bonus for those who are watching for a long time to get to kind of flesh things out even more so by seeing these different sides of the characters. You've got yourself, you've got Jimmy. Now you're out there. He's relaxed a little bit. So he's back in the zone somewhat.
Yes, Jimmy does better if he doesn't think. So Stephanie was like, don't think. Right.
The thinking was getting in the way. But unfortunately, Fernando and Kimmy still not necessarily getting out of the gate very well, not doing so well. And in the end of this round, nobody's happy anymore because DJ
the women
realizes,
all storm off.
Yeah, they are all united, and they're all out of there. DJ realizes that Steve was throwing the game, so not happy. There's no success in Fernando and Kimmy land, so they're not happy. Just nobody is happy with anything anymore on the female side, certainly, or the male side, because the guys are now just thrown for a loop. They don't know what to do. They're screwed.
Right. They're like, how did we make them mad when we're trying to make them happy? So it kind of backfires.
Yeah. And another fun thing about this episode that, you know, clearly made it a little bit unique here is that a Netflix show doesn't have commercial breaks, but we kind of did, because in between each round, the kids
Right.
were out there fulfilling their sponsorships. So they're going live on whatever they are broadcasting on, and they're like, they're
Right.
doing these ridiculous old-timey live commercial
Commercials.
reads
Right.
from like so it's a lot of fun just to think of the fact that while you guys are in misery, they're at least raking it in with some sort of sponsorship money. So good
Right.
for
They're
them.
trying to do something. Yeah, exactly. And I had a lot of fun when I directed that, just because, you know, I wanted it to look as unprofessional and like these kids were just trying to do the best they could. And, you know, there was one moment, I think, where they do the one commercial and Jackson's head's completely cut off. And I made that as an intentional choice on the shot on the iPad, because I was like, you know, who frames their stuff perfectly when they're shooting on an iPad? You can't see. Nobody does.
Right.
So, you know, he's the tallest kid. So of course they framed it for, and he's going to, you know, we're going to cut his head off and then just see him a little bit. Like, you know, funny things like that, just to give it that air of, you know, of the kids not doing this perfectly. I didn't want it to look like, oh, wow, that's such a cute little framed shot. You know, I was like, oh, I wanted it to look like, oh, oops. Yeah.
Amateur hour. Yeah, sure.
Right.
Was it a unique experience for you directing? I mean, you've obviously been working with these kids for years now, but did you have what you felt to be maybe a unique insight into directing kids or being able to work with them because of your own experience as a child actor?
I did, absolutely. And it's one of the things that I actually am wanting to focus on now, and have, you know, had meetings with different studios about potentially directing more multicam comedies, but particularly those with kids in it. Because, you know, I found that I work really well with kids, and having that understanding of what it's like to be a kid on the other side, and to be able to say, like, dude, I get it. Like, school and this, you're doing it all, like, you're tired. I got it. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to do it one more time. And we're, you know what I mean? And having that understanding that I don't think a lot of adults in this business have, if you haven't been on the other side. You know, it's a whole different set of circumstances for kids working in this business. And, you know, as kids, you have to be professional even when you don't feel like it, when you just feel like being a kid or having a meltdown or having a moment or whatever, you know. And so we had, of course, you know, the kids were kids. And I have a really close relationship with Elias, who plays Max on the show, with all the kids really. But he, you know, he really drove that show. He was the host of the Nearly Wed Game. And so it really required him to, you know, to be on it and to really carry a lot of those scenes with his, you know, his timing, his dry humor, his, you know, all of that, be able to, you know, really pick up on cues so that when things are going south, you know, he's the one sort of directing the ship. So it was a lot, you know, on him that I needed. And, you know, he started to have like one moment he was frustrated with himself. I think that he wasn't doing what he wanted to be doing, or that he wasn't doing it right, or whatever it was. You know, and I just talked to him, and we smiled and we laughed, and I got him calmed down and comfortable. And, you know, having been a child actor, being a mom, having, you know, I was going to be an elementary school teacher. That's what I went to college for, was, you know, to be a teacher. So I have some background of working with kids and stuff, and I enjoy it. You know, do they drive you nuts? Absolutely, they're kids. But I think having all of those things in combination when working with kids in this business is really helpful, because I have so many different ways of connecting and understanding and being able to work with them, and not take for granted, you know, when the kids are having a day, when they're just really on their game, that to not take for granted that they haven't worked really, really hard and been doing hours of schoolwork before all of that. And, you know, so I'd say that perspective really, really helped me to be able to engage and work with the kids, and also to be able to give them notes in a way that they would understand or get, or things that I could reference, you know what I mean? So it was really helpful to have all of that in my background.
Nice. Very cool. So It's interesting that this episode kind of, if you think about it this way, it's almost like a 3-act play, which follows the 3 segments of a game show. So it's a lot of things at once, but it works so well. We come back for this makeshift third round now. This is the guys collectively putting their heads together and then individually coming up with ways to make this right. So
Yes.
it's not really about the game anymore. This is just about survival, and it's about mending
Right. It's
whatever
about
offenses.
figuring out how to make their women very happy. Like, okay, maybe
Yes.
we lost the game, but what can I do that is special, for these women, to show them why each guy is really in love with them. And it was one of the best scenes ever. I loved it when they came out and did their thing. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, but all 3 of them highlights, of course. Fernando comes out first, and he is going to profess his love for all that is Kimmy Gibbler, by essentially being and dressing like
Yes.
Kimmy Gibbler.
By
So
celebrating her crazy, wacky style and just putting it all out there and saying, that he loves Kimmy because of all of her out there loud stuff. But oh my gosh, we didn't see even Juan Pablo. I mean, wardrobe and stuff, I knew kind of what he was wearing and everything. As a director, I had to pick some stuff. But the day he got done, it was a surprise to all of us to see him finally done. It was hilarious. I mean, he looked so great as Kimmy Gibbler. Juan Pablo really did a great job with that.
would you say over the course of the years of Fuller House, and this is not to say anything about anybody, all of the cast just so excellent then and now, Juan Pablo, maybe one of the most, from my side of the camera, one of the most fearless, just all-in comedic performers that we've seen in a long time. I mean, he just went broke every moment that he was on camera.
He is so talented. I mean, and he has been, acting and singing and doing all this stuff for years, and he's just so talented and so genuine and kind. I mean, that was one thing I will say with Fuller House, sort of that, whatever the magic fairy dust was that blessed our original cast with being, amazing and getting along. It really continued with the second one, and we welcomed in, the kids and the guys, and, it just all meshed together so nicely. And, again, Juan Pablo was just, he went for it all the way, no matter what. And he's just brilliant.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And of course, he was just the first of 3. So then, of course,
Indeed.
we had Jimmy,
right.
who is
right. Well,
on a
Steve goes.
mission.
It's I think it's.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Steve came next, right?
Comes next, right? Because Jimmy we saved for last.
Yes, and with good reason. So
Yeah.
Steve came out. He had a little bit of a different approach, but he had just the way to make DJ happy. He said it with banners.
Organized, multiple banners. Yes, that was that. And of course, we all joked like, how did he have these banners made? Wait, they've been there? What?
Right.
Don't pull the strings. But but it was, it was really funny. And it was, DJ loves her organized party planning things. So that was a really fun, cute, of course she had a response to him as well.
Yes. 2 out of 3. 2 out of 3 problems solved already, but the best for last, of course, and this, of course, maybe the greatest tribute you could ever ask for you, for your character, for your legacy on Full House.
It really, really was. It really was. Yes.
Jimmy Gibbler comes out, not only reprising one of the more well-remembered scenes from the original Full House, which is, of course, you, Stephanie Tanner, dancing to Love Shack on the telethon.
For our the telethon, right? And I had these blue leggings on and this ridiculous sweater. It's been all over the internet. It was all over the internet and a viral thing to different hip hop songs and stuff, like me dancing as a little kid. And so Jimmy comes out and recreates the Love Shack dance. And let me tell you, Adam Hagenbooth, that plays Jimmy, is also one of the funniest, most committed, brilliant actors, and he was always willing to take a chance. And he worked so hard at this. We had our choreographers come in, and he learned that dance like exactly. He learned the whole thing from start to finish, and he was so proud of himself. And he was so like, "Am I doing it right? Did I do a good job for you?" I was like, I couldn't ask for better. It was so great, and he just went all out. And I mean, when you see us cracking up, it was absolutely 100% genuine, because again, we hadn't seen him in his outfit with his side pony and, all of that stuff. So when he comes out dressed basically like Stephanie,
yeah,
I mean, we all died. And, Adam is just this giant, well-built dude. And so it was hilarious to see him in these leggings and like doing the Running Man. And he's not a dancer. And he will be the first to tell you, I am not a dancer. So
right.
It was hilarious. And I told him, I said, I don't think I've ever watched anyone do the Running Man that hard into the floor because he's so powerful. I was like, you're literally gonna punch a hole through the floor. But it was great. And watching that, like I said, as a director and as an actor, it just made me so happy, because everyone in that episode really gave it so much to make it, I think, one of the funniest episodes of the last season. I mean, I would even not, and literally not because I directed it, I would put it in probably the top 5 or 10 episodes of Fuller House, just because as actors, we all felt so confident with that episode and the writing and how everything went off. So it's one that I'm really, really proud of. Mm-hmm. And I love watching it. And the last 5 minutes of the dancing is just it's one of my favorite bits.
It's an amazing it must have been so surreal to see. I mean, you're directing this guy who is being you and doing a dance that you did long ago, and you're kind of at the helm of it, but just crazy.
It's I mean, it was definitely not anything that I will probably ever see again on a show that I direct.
Yes. Yes. And I think where we're going with this is it certainly sounds like you have found and got the opportunity here to get your feet wet and find this passion for doing more of this, as you were saying. And what a way to kick it off. I mean, like you said, something exactly like this probably won't happen again, but it's so cool to kind of say goodbye.
In the land of sitcoms is always fun and silly, and especially if you're working on kid sitcoms, you always have all kinds of fun, crazy stuff. But no, this, I mean, I am so grateful, and I don't think I could have asked for, a better experience being on both sides of the camera. But to kick my directing career off, and that having been my first show, I was so proud of it. And when I went in to do, editing and stuff with everyone, I just watched the first cut and I was like, wow, this is, I was so proud of it already. I was really happy with it. So it definitely helped boost the confidence of, and the security in knowing that this is definitely something that I want to continue pursuing, and that I can feel really good about,
And here's something else I think you should feel good about that I love the sort of the parallel situation that, as part of the original Full House, I believe Full House and those of you involved in it kind of paved the way for all these family-oriented sitcoms to survive and thrive and kind of dot the whole landscape of TV. And now you've created this future, now this present, where there's so much family-oriented TV, and if that's the direction you want to go in, you've essentially created all those opportunities for yourselves. So
I mean, it's nice to think that we maybe had a little bit of an input and a stamp on, how family television shows are done. I mean, Full House and now Fuller House is part of a huge legacy of television that's never really been done as successously as Full and Fuller House have done. I mean, our shows have never been off the air since they went on. They've just, they're around constantly, and that's a huge honor. And so to think that, other shows, other family shows have looked to us to figure out, what it is that families, kids like, how to keep it going, how to make it interesting. That's a huge honor. It's, again, like we always said about Full House and Fuller House, we're not doing the most necessarily earth-shattering, dramatic stories, but what we do is important, and what we do for kids and families, and to bring joy and laughter and do all that fun, silly stuff. I feel like what we did on our shows made a real difference with that.
Absolutely. And it's going to continue to, because people are going to continue to watch Full House. They're going to continue to watch Fuller House, and they're going to continue to watch anything and everything that you do next. So
I hope so. I hope so.
Undoubtedly. So I think we're all excited to see where things go with you, what projects come up next. Are you in the mode of sharing news and things like that when it comes up on social media? Are you encouraging them to follow
right now, there, because of COVID and all of that, there is production work is very minimal right now. So I haven't really worked since, November. I've done a few things from home, a few like small fun guest appearances on like Celebrity Watch Party and Celebrity Call Center, which was fun, and a couple of things like that, just silly things that I could shoot from home. But as far as like real work, I've been doing a lot of meetings at home and doing all that kind of stuff, but it's hard right now. It's hard for everybody, and so just trying to figure out what's next. I have, been meeting with directors and different studios about what I want to do next with directing. And in a sense, our business is going to change dramatically as far as how we operate and how like everyone's. And so, because I haven't maybe necessarily gotten my heels dug in too much into having a certain way that I do things directorially, I feel like maybe that I'm going to tell myself that that's an advantage, because I don't have a lot of things to unlearn. I've just got to navigate some new territory. And, instead of being like, oh, I can't do that anymore, it's like, okay, no, this is what we work with, and this is how we figure it out. So, looking at all that, and, I've been super active politically and on social media right now. So that's kind of been my focus. But I have definitely, I definitely want to get back to work. And I'm sure that my family would like that too, because everyone goes a little crazy after not working.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like at least mentally the wheels are turning and you're working very hard, and sooner or later that unpause button will be hit, and
exactly. And I've been doing my podcast from home, so that has been able to at least keep me going, and that's fun. My podcast is Never Thought I'd Say This, with my friend Celia Behar, and it's an inappropriate, crazy look at parenting, and it's pretty unfiltered and decidedly not Danny Tanner approved. Bob Saget approved, but maybe not Danny Tanner.
and very brave if you're recording it from home, because you're doing it from the belly of the beast. So
yes, exactly. Exactly. Well, I do it during a time when my kids aren't here, so that they don't hear me talking about them. But my older one listens to my podcast now, so this is becoming a problem.
You need to create a separate feed, just a special edited version.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Well, listen, everyone needs to check out Jodie's podcast for now and pay attention to what's going on in hopefully the near future, because I think we're going to be seeing, hearing, and just watching a lot more of what you do. And in the meantime, we're just going to watch Full and Fuller House for the next 500 years, because that's never going away.
It's never going away. Enjoy it. I think we all need a little dose of some, television distraction and soul food right now, things that bring us some comfort. And check out Never Thought I'd Say This. And that's our podcast with me and my friend Celia Behar. And then you can follow me at Jodie Sweetin on Twitter and Instagram, and at official Jodie Sweetin on Facebook.
Awesome. Will do. Thank you so much, Jodie. It's been great having you on the show.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thanks.